My boss told me age matters, but every night with her proved it only counts in seconds spent together. It was one of those quiet mornings in the office where the city outside still felt half asleep, the streets hazy with early sunlight and the distant hum of traffic. I was at my desk, immersed in a pile of reports, when she walked in. My boss, her presence always seemed to bend the light just a little differently, moved with the kind of quiet confidence that made the air feel heavier, yet not suffocating. She carried herself as if she knew exactly how every glance and gesture affected those around her, and I couldn't help noticing. She passed by my desk with a stack of folders, and as our hands brushed lightly while exchanging paperwork, a curious warmth ran through me. It wasn't anything overt, just a fleeting touch, but the subtle pressure of her fingers against mine lingered in my mind far longer than it should have. I felt my heartbeat quicken, though I tried to focus on the numbers and charts in front of me. Her voice broke through my thoughts, gentle yet precise, correcting a detail I had overlooked. "You might want to double-check this section, it could change the report entirely," she said, her tone calm but carrying an undercurrent of care. I looked up and caught her eyes, calm, brown, and steady, and for a moment, it felt like the room had shrunk to just the two of us. There was something quietly playful there, as if she knew the effect she had, yet pretended not to. I busied myself pretending to read the document, aware of the faint scent she always seemed to carry, something like vanilla and warm coffee, subtle but lingering. The office seemed unusually quiet after she moved away, every soft scratch of my pen and the distant hum of the air conditioner suddenly amplified in my consciousness. I realized I had been watching her more than the reports, noting the grace in the way she crossed her legs while sitting in a meeting, or how her laugh, small and contained, could somehow echo long after it ended. Part of me wanted to dismiss it, she was my boss, older, experienced, a figure of authority. But another part, the part that had been quietly observing her for weeks, couldn't ignore the magnetic pull. I caught myself imagining what it would feel like to lean just a little closer during conversation, to feel the quiet steadiness of her presence a little more intimately. It was a dangerous fascination, yes, but one that felt entirely natural. Even if age and professional boundaries loomed like invisible walls, the tension simmered beneath the surface, a slow, teasing warmth that promised something deeper if we dared to notice it. And for the first time, I realized that sometimes the smallest gestures, the brush of a hand, the shared smile, could start a fire that neither of us had expected. The days that followed were quieter than I expected, yet somehow more charged. We no longer needed dramatic gestures to notice each other. It was in the small moments, the gentle way she asked how my weekend went, the way her eyes lingered on mine when I explained a detail of a project, almost like she was reading not just my words, but the thoughts behind them. Late evenings became our unspoken rhythm. Most of the office had long gone home, leaving the hum of the computers and the soft ticking of the wall clock as our only companions. I remember one evening in particular, she was bent over a spreadsheet, her brow furrowed in concentration, and I sat nearby, pretending to review my own work. Yet my attention kept straying. She looked up suddenly, and our eyes met. The slight curve of her smile, warm but teasing, made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. She told me a story about a trip she had taken years ago, about the quiet streets of an old town and the unexpected kindness of strangers. I listened, captivated not just by the story, but by the way she told it, soft pauses, small gestures of her hands, the faint laugh that followed the memory. It was in these moments that I began to see more than the composed, professional woman I was supposed to respect. I saw her vulnerability, her warmth, her humanity. Physical closeness started to feel natural, even if unintentional. Sometimes her fingers brushed mine while pointing at a chart, other times, she would lean slightly closer to whisper a comment, the scent of her perfume brushing past me. Each moment lingered longer than it should, the warmth of her presence seeping into the space between us. There was a quiet joy in these evenings. No words needed to acknowledge what was growing between us, it was in the soft laughter, the shared glances, the way our shoulders occasionally touched as we reached for files at the same time. I felt my own hesitation softening, replaced by a curious anticipation for each small interaction. Even as I reminded myself of the professional boundary, I couldn't help but marvel at how easy it felt to be near her. She had a way of turning ordinary moments, coffee breaks, late-night reports, casual conversations, into something charged with subtle intimacy. It was slow, quiet, and careful, but each moment built upon the last, constructing a bridge between two worlds, hers, full of experience and poise, and mine, filled with admiration and a hesitant longing. By the end of that week, it was clear that something unspoken was growing between us. Not yet confessed, not yet defined, but undeniable. And I found myself realizing, with a mix of excitement and fear, that I wanted to explore it, even if only through these small, seemingly insignificant moments. The connection between us had started to settle into a quiet rhythm, one filled with unspoken understanding and attention that was both exhilarating and terrifying. It wasn't bold gestures or overt declarations that defined it, but the subtle ways our proximity seemed to matter. One evening, as the office emptied and the city outside blurred into a soft twilight, that tension shifted just slightly. I had been struggling with a particularly stubborn project, feeling the frustration rise in the pit of my stomach. She appeared by my desk without a word, simply standing there for a moment, observing. Then, almost instinctively, her hand found my arm. It was light, a gentle touch that didn't demand attention, yet it grounded me in a way nothing else had. The warmth of her skin against mine was immediate, intimate in its simplicity. My breath caught, and for a moment, the frustration that had weighed on me vanished. "Sometimes it helps to take a step back," she said softly, leaning slightly closer to point at a section of my work. Her shoulder brushed against mine, and I was acutely aware of the faint scent of her perfume, a soft, comforting mix of vanilla and warmth that lingered in the air long after she moved away. It wasn't a touch meant to entice, but it held a weight of care, of presence, that resonated deeper than any words. These moments became more frequent, though always fleeting. A hand resting on my shoulder while explaining a complex point. Fingers brushing mine while adjusting a page in a report. Even the simple act of her standing close as we looked at a screen together carried a tension that neither of us rushed to define. Each touch was charged with meaning precisely because it was small, deliberate, and carefully measured. There was a quiet electricity in these shared moments, like the world had shrunk to just the two of us, the rest of the office fading into background noise. I found myself noticing every detail, the way her hair fell over her shoulder, the soft tilt of her head when she considered a problem, the calm steadiness of her breath near me. Every subtle gesture became an anchor, a reminder of the growing connection we shared. And yet, there was hesitation, too. Both of us aware of the professional boundary, of the age difference that hovered silently between us. That awareness made each touch more tantalizing, more meaningful. I couldn't deny the thrill of simply being near her, the warmth that spread through me at the smallest contact. It was a slow, deliberate dance, a teasing exploration of closeness without crossing lines, a silent acknowledgement that something far deeper was beginning to take root between us. By the end of that evening, I realized that these small touches had begun to speak louder than words. They hinted at a desire for closeness, a longing for connection that neither of us fully admitted yet, but both of us felt with unmistakable clarity. It was late afternoon when the office had finally emptied, leaving only the soft hum of the air conditioning and the occasional clatter of a keyboard. I was organizing some papers when she appeared in the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Her presence, as always, seemed to fill the room in a way that made everything else fade into the background. She handed me a cup, and our fingers brushed briefly, just enough to send a quiet warmth through me, and then she sat down across from me. "I had a feeling you might need this," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine with a kind of calm attentiveness that made it impossible to look away. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, almost tentatively, she began to share something personal, a memory of a time when she had felt uncertain about a big decision in her career. The words were quiet, almost hesitant at first, as if she was testing the waters. As she spoke, I realized I was seeing a side of her I hadn't noticed before, the quiet vulnerability beneath her poised, confident exterior. I listened closely, not interrupting, just letting her voice fill the space between us. There was something incredibly grounding about being trusted with her thoughts and feelings. I offered my support with gentle words, careful not to overstep, but fully present. When I reached across the table to lightly rest my hand on hers for a moment, she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled slightly around mine, a subtle, deliberate connection that carried more meaning than words could express. Her eyes softened as she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that spoke of relief and trust. It's rare, she admitted quietly, to find someone who actually listens. The vulnerability in her voice made my chest tighten. I felt the depth of her trust as something fragile and precious, something I wanted to protect. Throughout our conversation, I was acutely aware of the small gestures that deepened our connection, the tilt of her head when she considered my words, the quiet exhale as she leaned slightly closer, the faint warmth of her presence that seemed to settle over me like a gentle embrace. Every movement, every pause, felt charged with an intimacy that was emotional rather than physical, yet just as profound. By the time she left, the air between us was different, charged with unspoken understanding and a newfound closeness. I realized that the slow burn of our connection wasn't just about the small touches or lingering glances anymore, it was about being present for each other in the quiet moments, about sharing pieces of ourselves that no one else saw. In that moment, I understood something essential: true intimacy wasn't in grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was in the simple act of letting someone in, of allowing them to see you fully, and in return, noticing the small, deliberate ways they allowed themselves to be seen as well. It was a Friday evening, and the office was finally quiet. She suggested we take a short walk before leaving, a break from the fluorescent lights and the hum of computers. Outside, the city had softened into a golden haze, the fading sunlight reflecting off the glass buildings and casting long shadows on the sidewalks. It felt intimate, almost suspended in time, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of us. We wandered past quiet streets, making small talk about things far removed from deadlines and reports, favorite books, movies, even trivial habits we hadn't noticed in each other. Her laughter was lighter than in the office, more relaxed, and it drew me in with a magnetic ease. There was something in the way she tilted her head when she spoke, her hair brushing her shoulder, that made it impossible not to notice every subtle movement. At a small bookstore, we lingered near the shelves, browsing quietly. Our hands brushed more than once as we reached for the same book, and each accidental touch sent a flutter of warmth up my arm. We exchanged glances, each pause heavy with unspoken awareness, each smile lingering just a little longer than it needed to. It was a strange, thrilling feeling, like we were both circling the edge of something forbidden, yet entirely natural. On a bench outside the bookstore, we sat close enough that our shoulders touched. The air was cool, but there was a warmth in the way her presence pressed softly against me. She didn't say anything at first, just glanced at the passing city lights, letting the silence stretch between us. That quiet spoke volumes. I realized that neither of us needed to verbalize the tension building between us. It was in the shared space, the brushed fingers, the way our breathing seemed to match without effort. Her gaze met mine suddenly, and I caught a flicker of something: curiosity, hesitation, maybe even desire, mirrored in my own eyes. For the first time, I sensed that she was aware of the same magnetic pull I had felt for weeks. The age difference and the professional boundary were still present, hovering like shadows at the edges of our awareness, but they seemed less important in that moment. It was in these shared, ordinary experiences, touching hands over a book, laughing quietly in the fading sunlight, sitting close on a bench, that the depth of our connection became undeniable. Neither of us needed to rush. The realization that we were both drawn to each other, fully aware and fully willing to explore it slowly, settled into the quiet spaces between us. As we walked back toward the office to leave, our hands brushed once more, and this time, neither of us pulled away. It was subtle, but it said everything that words could not. We were aware. We were present. And we were moving towards something far deeper than either of us had expected. The evening had settled into a gentle hush, the city outside bathed in a soft amber glow from streetlights reflecting on rain-slicked pavement. We were alone in the office again, the hum of the computers the only sound, and yet the air between us felt charged in a way that neither emails nor casual conversation could ever capture. I had been rehearsing what I wanted to say for hours, yet the moment I looked at her, all rehearsed words seemed impossibly small. She was seated across from me, leaning slightly forward with her elbows resting on the desk, eyes warm but wary. The familiar scent of her perfume, a comforting blend of vanilla and something floral I couldn't name, drifted through the quiet space. I noticed the small crease near her eyes when she smiled, a crease I had come to recognize and, strangely, find reassuring. My heart thrummed, a rapid yet steady rhythm, as if it knew what my mind was still hesitating to voice. "I need to tell you something," I began, my voice quieter than I intended, carrying the weight of all the weeks we had shared. Her eyes met mine, patient, inviting, and just for a second, I felt the courage to continue. "I don't know exactly when it started, but I've realized I care about you. More than I probably should." She tilted her head slightly, the faintest hesitation in her gaze, as if weighing the age gap, the professional boundary, and the undeniable tension that had been simmering between us. "I was wondering when you'd say it," she replied softly, her voice carrying a mix of vulnerability and restrained desire. "I care too. I just didn't know if it was appropriate, or wise." The air between us seemed to vibrate with unspoken emotion, the silence stretching long enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence as though it were tangible. Our hands hovered near each other on the desk, a delicate space separating us, yet charged with meaning. Tentatively, I reached out, and our fingers brushed. Slowly, deliberately, we intertwined them, letting the quiet act speak louder than any words could. In that moment, all the hesitation, all the careful boundaries we had maintained, seemed less significant. The connection between us, the shared glances, the accidental touches, the subtle intimacies, had been leading to this, a mutual acknowledgement of something deeper, something worth exploring, even if cautiously. She leaned slightly closer, resting her hand lightly over mine. I felt the faint warmth of her touch seeping into me, steady and grounding, as if telling me it was okay to feel, to hope, to imagine what could be. For the first time, the tension wasn't just palpable, it was shared, embraced, and silently celebrated. That evening ended not with a dramatic declaration, but with the quiet understanding that we had crossed a threshold. We had admitted to ourselves what we had both been feeling all along. And somehow, in that understated, delicate moment, it felt like the beginning of everything. The following week carried a subtle shift in the air, one that neither of us needed to announce with words. The office felt lighter, almost warmer, as if the shared understanding between us had quietly changed the atmosphere. Every glance, every brush of hands across the desk, carried a soft acknowledgement. We had crossed a threshold, yet we were determined to move slowly, carefully, savoring the connection we had discovered. That evening, she suggested a walk to a small nearby park, a quiet refuge from the city lights and office routines. The sky was painted with soft hues of orange and lavender, the air cool but comforting. We walked side by side, shoulders brushing occasionally, the faint warmth of her presence a constant reassurance. The world around us felt alive, yet secondary to the simple act of being near each other. We stopped at a bench beneath a large tree, the leaves rustling gently above us. Neither of us spoke immediately, the silence was not uncomfortable, but intimate. I noticed the way her hand rested near mine on the bench, and I instinctively shifted closer, letting our fingers brush. When I finally reached out and held her hand, it felt natural, unhurried, and deeply affirming. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers threaded gently through mine, the warmth and steady pressure communicating more than any words could. We talked quietly, not about work or responsibilities, but about hopes, dreams, and small confessions we hadn't shared before. Her laugh, soft and genuine, carried across the park like music, and I found myself leaning closer, subtly savoring the sound, the warmth, and the presence that had become so essential to me. She shared a memory from her childhood, and I responded with mine, our stories weaving together in a tapestry of trust and understanding. Eventually, as the sky deepened into twilight, I turned toward her, noticing the way the fading light kissed her features, softening every line, highlighting the calm confidence in her gaze. I brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear, a gentle, deliberate touch, and saw the quiet smile that confirmed she felt the same connection I did. No grand declarations were needed. A simple cheek kiss, soft and fleeting, sealed the unspoken promise between us. Fingers remained intertwined as we stood, ready to return to the city, yet neither of us felt rushed. The age gap, the professional boundaries, the world outside, none of it mattered in that quiet, shared moment. As we walked back together, side by side, I felt a profound sense of warmth and contentment. The slow burn of our connection had matured into something real, respectful, and deeply affectionate. I realized, with a quiet certainty, that love wasn't measured in years or titles, but in presence, trust, and the willingness to explore what two hearts could quietly create together. By the time we reached the street outside the office, our fingers were still intertwined, our laughter mingling with the night air, and for the first time, it felt like everything had finally aligned. If you loved this slow burn, age gap romance, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Two hearts share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a connection that defied expectations? Hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story.